Hello everybody, we are continuing on with our NHL season preview series, and today we have the always impressive Pittsburgh Penguins. Now before we start, please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new and you're interested in hockey. Of course, hockey season is about to start back up, and I would love to do this as a full-time career one day, and would love to have you along for the journey. Now let's talk about the Pens. Pittsburgh did their thing yet again, making the playoffs for the umpteenth million time in a row in the Sidney Crosby era, as they went 46, 25, and 11 for 103 points and a third place finish in the Metro Division, before running into goalie injuries and then losing to the New York Rangers in 7 games in the first round of the playoffs. This was their 4th consecutive season, by the way, that this did happen, where they failed to advance to the second round or further, and we keep hearing about them trying to make a cup run, but can it happen during this last kind of group era where you have Crosby, Malkin, and Letang? We're going to talk about that and whether or not the door is kind of shut there. Now anyway, we will go on in this video to talk about some storylines to follow, as well as my expectations for the team this season. So let's get on into it. The first storyline will be, is Mike Sullivan finally able to stop having to look over his back? The 2-time Stanley Cup winning head coach has been one of the better coaches since he has arrived in the league, and he has, for whatever reason, had to practically hear non-stop about how his job is not safe. Personally, I think a big part of this is they won 2 cups early on, after this team had kind of been stuck in a rut where they had won that cup in 2009 and then hadn't been able to win another one. Suddenly they go on to win back-to-back, and then it goes from, oh, we are good enough to get there, to we are not only good enough to get there and win it, but do it multiple times, so we need to keep doing it while we can. And he is in a position now where he actually was talked about on whether or not he would be canned, but then got a 3-year extension to guide the Pens through the 2026-27 season. Honestly, as a fan of the game, I mean, I know I'm not a big Pittsburgh fan because of how good they've been, but I will say I felt really happy for him, as he's been able to get the playoffs, or his team to the playoffs every year since his arrival, if you include the qualifying round loss to the Montreal Canadiens, which I do because they probably would have finished in the top 3 in that division, so I will count that for them. But yeah, they are here, and they have been able to roll and win games and been able to, of course, win 2 cups. So this was good for him, as he has kept this roster afloat as they get older, which was the big worry for me. They've got some old hair, they've got some old age, some gray hairs in this lineup, and this was one of my concerns for them. And let's not forget some of the stretches too. You could look at this team and say, okay, maybe they're getting a little older, but can they still play well? Yes, they had periods where they really just dominated stretches of that series against New York, and they either had poor play in net to kind of hold them back, or they were out-goalied by the Vezina winner Igor Shesterkin, which happens, and that's kind of why I hope Pittsburgh would have fired him, so another team could have picked him up and then got a good head coach, and that would have been the scenario there. But I do think for him, he is going to be able to kind of be refreshed. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've worked a job, I know I have, that's had really poor management, and then I don't know if it's because of the people above them, they make your life really difficult, and instead of saying we need to get this done, they say if we don't get this done, it's going to be your fault and there's consequences, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, that doesn't make anybody better. Just being a jerk and all that does not make things better. And so I feel like for him, he's in a spot now where it seems like the organization really is content with him being their guy. So he might be able to break out a little bit of this slump this team's been in. Not to say it's all been him by any means, but to be able to break out of this and then get a refreshed coach that is ready for this season. And I think that's going to be really interesting come playoff time, or around playoff time, if they're able to do this, because again, they do have Stanley Cup aspirations, and I am hoping for him he is able to have the best ahead of him, whether that is in Pittsburgh or not. But yeah, I do think we're in a spot now where we could even see him go on to a further level, because he has got that security. As for another coaching, or another storyline I should say, that we're going to talk about, is this group that is kind of sticking around that is a little bit older. Now, they do have some other guys. They were able to keep a lot of guys like Danton Heinen, Brian Rust, and there was another guy, Kapanen. He was able to sign as well. These were some guys that are big names here, but I think that I really wanted to focus on guys like Letang, Malkin, and Raquel, because they're veterans and they are players that really should be good players this season, or at least contributing to their contracts. You look at a guy like Malkin, and he had a really interesting season because he was over a point per game player, but he hasn't been able to really play a full stretch of games in some time. You look at his past seasons, he's only played 70 plus games one time in that span, that being the 2017-18 season, and you kind of wonder, is Malkin, one of these older guys, going to be able to still play a key role for this team going forward? Yes, he did have 20-some goals and 42 points, I believe, in 41 games played, but a lot of the things you look at here kind of concern you a little bit. You look at the fact that 12 of his 22 assists were secondary assists, 9 of his goals came on the power play, and you would think maybe there could be some regression going forward. However, he is Gino, and I will say this about him. Him getting a full season where he's able to be healthy, I could really see him kind of get going in the right direction again. Not that he hasn't been a good player for the majority of his career. I just think we're at a point right now where it is, A, is he worth the money because he can't stay healthy or has battled some things, and then B, is he really being overvalued because of things like secondary assist, which I know people buy into a lot, but again, that is a little bit more random than primary assist. You know, your puck or the stick, or you have the puck on your stick and you get it to somebody like Crosby and you get a primary assist. That's replicatable, but you have it on somebody like you getting it to Letang who gets it to Crosby. You know what I mean? Like, you would just rather trust it to be where it would be more reliable and you could go there from that. But we'll see. As for Rickard Rakell, I look at him and he is another player I think the Pens would like to turn back time on. The Swiss still hasn't hit his 30s just yet. I believe he is a little bit over 29, might be like 29 and a half, but he hasn't had a 30 plus goal season since the 2017-18 campaign, hitting only 4 goals in his 19 regular season games with his new team. That would put him on pace for a 17 goal season, and it isn't likely what you're looking for with this contract. Again, another guy that's older, they got a deal that was kind of long term, and you're kind of thinking, well, is this the best idea? Luckily, it appears he'll have a good chance to get back to scoring ways, though, as he is projected to play on the first line and could see a spike in power play time after averaging a minute less on the man advantage once he went over to Pittsburgh. I don't know exactly what they're going to roll out there. Mike is going to know it better than anybody else. But if he's able to get more power play time and he is able to play on that top line, then I think we could see him kind of get a revitalization going and be in a really good spot to have a bounce back season and kind of get the media off him a little bit. But I think really for him, he is at that spot where he is towards the peak of his career. You know, once you hit that 30 mark, you are at the point where you've learned a lot and you're still physically usually at a point where you can still play at that high level. I'm really hoping that for Pittsburgh, not necessarily for me because I'm not a huge fan of Pittsburgh, but I'm hoping for Pittsburgh that he can help them a little bit, because you'd hate for that long-term deal to look bad for them going forward. As for Letang, he's got a much longer deal than I expected. He is 35, but now has a deal that goes through the 2027-28 season with some form of an NMC. No movement clause through there, and that is a little concerning. Yes, he's put together a truly impressive season after having a quieter year the year before that and had a career-high 68 points this past season at the ripe age of 34. But I still do wonder, was this the right move? Yes, it is a win-now team, very much so with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, some of those other guys that are older. But yikes, that was a long deal, and I think we can't really answer that in just 1 year. We'll have to look back at this and say, over the course of it, yes, this was a bad deal. But as for right now, I do think Letang could still be a good player for them. We have to remember, last season he was 16th for assists and 5th for defensemen in this category. He is a player that is probably still going to play a lot of minutes for them, is very experienced, and is still one of those guys that you would look at and say, yeah, he probably will end up with a high point total for a blue liner this season, especially considering the guys he's going to get to play with. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this is all going to go, but I will say there's a lot of guys that are going to have to play some key roles for this team that are a little bit older, and I'm a little bit more skeptical about what they can provide. Are there guys that could step up? Yeah, like I said, Russ, Kapanen, and Heinen are all very intriguing players that I do think will be able to take on bigger roles for this team. But in general, you look at some of the guys that are getting contracts for the coming years and what they're going to get paid, and you're thinking this is a little scary, but we're going to have to see. As for the final storyline, you know we're going to be talking about whether or not this team can get consistency in net. This is a situation where it feels like the Pens have been on the back foot in recent years, in between the pipes, going from one Tindy issue to the next. And right now, theoretically, they could be in good shape. You have Tristan Jarry, who has had good points in his career, and then you also have Casey DeSmith as their backup. Will they be able to stay healthy? That's entirely a different situation, and it is especially problematic because you don't have you-know-who, the spicy pork eater, to save the day, Louis Domingue. And at this situation, you're hoping Jarry, who has been kind of this fringe guy, can he take over? Can he stay healthy? Can he have a good year? Now would be the time, considering you are in this position, to focus on the very short term and get everything you can to juice the situation with the Crosby era. This is what I'm very curious to see, as they are in a spot where the Metro is kind of deep. You look at Washington, you could probably argue they'd have a case for at least hoping for a playoff appearance. You have the Islanders, who might have had a bad year, but they had a weird year in general. The Blue Jackets look better. The Devils look better. The Hurricanes should be good. The Rangers should be good. All in all, you really need this team to perform well and have a good year between their goalies. If DeSmith would be able to shoulder some load, that would be really sweet for them. But I am curious to see how this goes, because this team did have a triple-digit point total last season, and you would think that could possibly not be the case if they have some health issues in net this year. But like I said, if things are going well, you're probably thinking, hey, they're going to be all right. So, having said all this, what are my expectations for this team this season? Personally, I expect Pittsburgh to make the playoffs. Now, I don't exactly know if that'll happen, but you still look, Crosby is still a very good player. Maybe not as good as he once was compared to being some of these other guys. Definitely not a top 5 player anymore, in my opinion, but he still is very good. They have some good depth. You like a lot of the aspects of the roster. Mike Sullivan is a good head coach, etc., etc. This team has been there. They've done that for a long time. I would say they will probably get a top 3 spot in the Metro, but they really need to get it in the top 3, not play that wild card game. I don't think they'd be able to get the 2 or the 1 spot, probably 3 right here. But you're looking at this team, yes, they've got some great hairs, but I do think all around they should be good enough, and they are in a spot where they have to be good enough because you've spent a lot of money, you have some contracts on the book for the foreseeable future, and if this thing goes poorly, holy cow, this could be a very bad situation. It's Pittsburgh. Do I think that their title window is closed? Unfortunately, I'm going to say yes. I've kind of been on that trend for a little bit. I think last year might have been when I jumped on it. But you look at this roster, it's certainly not bad, and I do think they could make a run, but I would be surprised to even see them make it to a final at this point, and I would really be shocked, unless they played a bad team in the final, if they would be able to win it. But you're in the same situation as some other teams, and that's where you have a star player or multiple guys that are generational guys for an era, and you don't want to see them on another team or play on a bad team. So then you feel like you're forced, because of the fan base, to go out there and then throw together a roster that's good enough to make the playoffs, but they probably aren't good enough to win it, and that's kind of where I see Pittsburgh at right now. But anyway, I would love to hear what you have to say about Pittsburgh in your comments. Say what your expectations are for them. Please let me know down below in the comments. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. Oh, and make sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, stay safe. Have a great night. And you go Valky, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.